It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and you can get a personally autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. I autograph these books personally. And I do autograph them to the person, to their name on the order form. So I make it out to you. And you should put a nice little inscription in there too. Sometimes I have the winning lotto numbers that I put down for you. I guess if you're buying the book, you'll guaranteed to win the lotto as well. Get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. And it's not just a book about becoming a PI. There's a lot of stuff in there too, information in there about how to hire a PI, what to expect when you're trying to locate somebody, little tips and tricks of licensing laws, all kinds of stuff. And there's sample subpoenas in there. There's a ton of information in this book. And the first chapter is a little biography of my life, a little short, abbreviated bio of my life. I know a lot of people are interested in that always. We got a lot of questions for me and interesting stuff. So emailrevealer.com, you get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator, or emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend's cheating on you, which they probably are, the likes of you. Could be faithful to you. If you suspect infidelity, and when you have that suspicion, it's almost always correct, and you should go with your gut. If you suspect infidelity, the best way, the cheapest way to catch somebody cheating is the online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us their email address, and we trace that email address back to online dating websites and personal ads, and even Craigslist. We can catch them on Craigslist, a lot of stuff. So, and even if they have a secret email address they're not telling you about, we can even find secret email addresses. Okay, if you're doing something with an email, I'm like the guy for that. I can trace emails back to where they were sent from, locate and identify people by their email address, prove that an email was sent by a certain person, or any kind of a digital forensic testimony you need regarding email, I can help you out with. Emailrevealer.com. Also all kind of PI work as it searches, locates, adoption investigations, criminal background checks. If you want to collect child support, I can help you with that. Locate current place of employment. Okay, emailrevealer.com. Blah, 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 blah. We're done. Check out tomorrow's show. I got a big show for you tomorrow. We have Brad Schreiber coming back. I really enjoy Brad Schreiber when he comes on the show. He's been on before about Revolution's End. The show about Patty Hearst. Fascinating information about Patty Hearst. About Donald DeFreeze was a undercover agent for the intelligence agent. Then we had him on for Death in Paradise, about a book he did about the LA Coroner's Office. Very fascinating book. And we just had him on yesterday. He's going to be on tomorrow at 5 p.m. about the death of Jimi Hendrix. And he's convinced that Jimi Hendrix was murdered, and so am I, for my own reasons. You'll hear it on the show. Part 2 of that show, we have Amy Villela, who's running for Congress here in Nevada, running up against one of Boss Reed's cigar-chopping stooges. I got to be careful. I got to watch my step, man, I got to tell you. But we have Amy Villela coming on, and she's a real heroic woman who is running for Congress here in Nevada. And if you listen to the show, there's a show in the members section about Amy Villela and her daughter, Shalyn. And she lost her daughter because her daughter didn't have health insurance, and she went into the hospital and they sent her away, and they didn't do the proper, diagnosis on her. And a young daughter, like 20 years old, she lost this kid because of, and it wasn't even that she didn't even have health insurance. There was like a lapse in her health insurance. It's just a tragic situation. So anyway, so she's running for Congress now. The heroic woman, and we have her on there tomorrow. She's an expert on this Bernie bill and this Cassidy Graham, is it? Yeah, Graham Cassidy bill. And Heller. Heller is our local congressman who's also co-sponsoring that bill. But tonight, I'm going to talk about the saga of Sean David Morton, about his crimes, his cons, and his recent conviction and sentencing to 6 years in prison for defrauding the IRS and all kinds of wonderful crimes. Now, normally, I don't do these kind of, I do reports. I report on crimes and stuff like that and the incidents and different investigations I'm working on. But I normally don't go out and find one of these alternative media characters and expose them, you have some of these hosts that go on every week. I'm exposing this one. I'm exposing that one. And I don't want to be that guy. And this is a rare occasion I'm doing this. And even what I plan on doing too, I'm not going to expose everything I know about this situation here tonight. Okay. But this is a crime. It's in the news. It's in alternative media. People are talking about it. And I have some firsthand information about this. I have some firsthand dealings with these people. So I'd like to share with what I know. I also got a hold of the sealed indictment. Okay, which is not being floated around out there. So no one else is talking about it. So I'll talk about it. Tell you what's in there. So that's what we're going to have tonight. The story of Sean David Morton. But I don't want you to think, because a lot of times when these people do these exposing people, it's these obscure characters who really have no credentials, no background, and they're trying to make a name for themselves by attaching their name to other people. And I don't think this is this kind of case, because in this situation, Sean David Morton, he was a host on at least two of the stations I'm a host on now. He was on American Freedom Radio for a long time, and he was on Revolution Radio right before me. He was my lead-in to my show on Friday nights on Revolution Radio. So I know some things about Sean David Morton, some stuff in the background, and I also know some stuff about what's in his indictment, which is not being reported out there anywhere. And I also I want to tip my hat to the guys over at UFO Watchdogs, who are doing some great reporting, and they're like on Sean David Morton like a dog with a bone. They've been after him for many, many years, exposing all of his minor shenanigans, lying about his college degrees and lying about his background and making things up about his family and all that little nonsense, that he's done over the years, that, kind of puffery kind of stuff that everybody kind of expects from a character like him. They were even sued by Sean David Morton, and he lost, and he had to pay them $16,000 for their legal fees. And I don't even know if he ever paid it. It would be interesting to find out. But he was ordered by the judge to pay that. So who is Sean David Morton? Okay, the first I heard about Sean David Morton, I'm not quite sure. It was either on the Montel Williams show, because he stuck out like a sore thumb. Montel Williams was doing a show about the Area 51, and Sean David Morton was on there talking about how he had all this information, blah, blah, blah. And right at the end of the show, another guest on the panel started accusing him of being a fraud and lying about a doctor and a divinity degree that he had. And Sean David Morton was kind of stunned into silence there. It was a very awkward moment, but they, and it always stuck in my head. I always remembered it. So then later on, excuse me. The ghost of Sean David Morton's frog in my throat. Later on, he was a frequent guest on the Art Bell show. Okay, you might recall Art Bell had that coast-to-coast AM radio show and FM radio show in the middle of the night for many, many years. And I used to listen to Art Bell. And then later on, I became involved. They helped to negotiate the Art Bell lawsuit with Robert Stevens and who's the other character? David Oates, So I have some knowledge of the workings behind the scenes at Coast to Coast as well, having spent hours on the phone with Art Bell. Hey. So he would go on Art Bell and declare himself a psychic, not just any psychic, but the best psychic in the whole world, and a remote viewer. And I think he even claimed he was some kind of time traveler. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. So he's out there, and I never really, believed in it. I don't believe in that kind of stuff to begin with. But he's an entertaining character. So then after that, especially when Art Bell went off the air, he started his own little radio show every day on American Freedom Radio, which is a station that I'm on Saturday nights. I'm on there every Saturday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you can even catch it too early on Thursday mornings if you're really tuned into all this stuff. I know some people listen live. And he had a daily show on there, and I would tune into that once in a while, okay, because he was just an interesting guy. And I started noticing that a lot of the things he would be reporting were garbage, like Benjamin Fulford. Like I think he's been discredited by now. No one believes anything he has to say anymore. Sasha Fall, who has never been right once in her whole life. But I could tell it's a made-up name. It's a made-up content. Cliff High, that guy who supposedly had the web bots and the spiders and stuff like that and could predict the future and predicted 2012 and it was 2001. Well, and then I think 2012 he predicted all this end of the world stuff every time it comes around. The world's going to end tomorrow, by the way, too. If you didn't know this, September 23rd is the end of the world again. Same characters fall forward every time. And Cliff High never got a prediction right ever either. And he was a guest there on Sean David Morton. What really stuck out at me is I noticed Sean David Morton's a right-wing guy. And he married a woman in the Mormon church. And he always would report these nonsense email hoaxes, that stuff, that fake news. It wasn't called fake news back then, but that garbage stuff was forwarded around. It was nonsense. It was always fake. And that everybody knew was fake. You looked into it and you found out, a couple of days later it was fake. But he would report it as fact over and over. Because since he did a live show every day, he would have notes, he would have fallback notes that when you run out of things to talk about, you got your fallback notes. And so he would repeat the fallback notes every day. Okay, this guy. See, it's funny because before I got behind the mic and you're just driving around in your car, you listen to the guy on the radio, you don't pay that close attention, which I don't expect people to be paying that close attention to me when I talk. But once you start doing it and you listen to these shows, you listen to other hosts and other radio announcers and DJs and stuff like that, you notice when they've run out of things to talk about and they start repeating themselves, or you notice when the guest is late getting on, and they're filling up time, you notice that more carefully when you're doing a show. So one of his fallback notes was this stuff he would repeat over and over, this hoax stuff. So it turns out he gets into a fight with Danny Romero, who's the owner of American Freedom Radio, and I believe it was his son, who was the board operator for Sean's show. Now, I got a show over there at American Freedom Radio, and I got to tell you, and I'm on a lot of stations. I deal with a lot of different stations, back and forth. Hey, you want my show? You don't want my show? Do you deal with a lot of different people? People contact me. They want me to put my show on their station, and you check them out and say, oh, my God, this guy's he's a nutcase. A lot of, they got egos, these small stations and stuff like that. Danny at American Freedom Radio is a really cool guy. He's like 70 years old or something like that. And he produces every show. He's there at the end of the microphone at the start of the show and the finish of the show. He's there producing the show live as you're doing the show. All the content on there is live. This is a hardworking guy. And he's not a pain in the ass. He's not a difficult guy to work for. He's not one of these egomaniacs. He's very soft-spoken, sweet guy. Even when we've had disagreements and we've had problems, I want to do something, he wants to do something, and we have a disagreement. And even when it looked like I wasn't going to continue doing a show there, it was all friendly and respectful and polite and professional in every possible way. I have no complaints. And even all that stuff was instigated by some characters in the background, which I plan on doing. In my head right now, I plan on doing a second show about the same topic where I'm going to name all the names. I want to tell you all the real dirt. But that'll be in the members section because I don't want it just for my loyal listeners to support the show. So he gets bounced off of American Freedom Radio and he winds up over at Revolution Radio. And he's on there for about a year. And then I start getting involved with Revolution Radio. Okay. And my first show there was I was interviewed by Douglas Dietrich. And then Doug had this little knack. It was funny, too, because the show I did with Doug, he had a problem with his Skype. He got knocked off the air. He couldn't interview me. I had to do the show myself. We had a solo and just talk and talk and talk until a story, just talk about myself until Doug came back on the air and he says, well, tell me about this. I said, well, we already talked about that, Doug. So, but I didn't hang up, a lot of guests would have just hung up, but I stuck it out. I just talked and talked and talked. He came on and me and Doug developed a friendship. And he had this little knack with what he would do is every week when he was doing his show, he would bring up my name and egg me on, push my buttons until I would call in. And then I'd call in. And especially it was fun too back in those days because I was coaching my daughter's basketball team. And so I'd be just back from coaching basketball and, all sweaty and stuff like that, and be home drinking a couple of beers and Doug's talking about me. I'd jump on the air. Start screaming into the microphone. I didn't even have a microphone. I just scream into the laptop. So the first one to interview me over there was Doug Dietrich. And then another one who interviewed me over there was Sean David Morton's producer. This guy named Steve Travesty. Steve Travesty is an interesting guy. He's like 40 years old. I don't think he's ever had a job in his life. He has a band, and he has tattoos and piercings. So he says, well, no one will hire him because of his work as a whistleblower with Sean David Morton. And that's why he can't get a job. So he interviewed me, and it was a very odd interview, too. I'd never experienced an interview like this before, or since, really, because during the breaks, he would come on and say, well, okay, after the break, I'm going to ask you this, and then we'll talk about this, and then we'll talk about that. And he would kind of lay out the whole, no one's ever done that with me before. Sometimes people ask you, hey, can you write down the questions in advance and send them to me? And so that's common, but his interviewing style was unique. So, Steve Travesty, really enjoyed our interview and kept in touch with me. Because, I had to do the interview via Skype, so we had a Skype connection, and he liked to keep in contact with me and send me little notes and questions and stuff. And so he was Sean David Morton's producer. Now, after I started my show first started at 11 a.m., and the second show I did, my guest bailed on me 10 seconds before the show. So I said, okay, that's fine. I've been on the air plenty of times. I'll go on. I'll just talk for 2 hours. I'll tell them it's a brand new audience. I'll tell them who I am, everything I've done in my life. Let's talk. So, but a few minutes into the show, I got a phone call from Steve Travesty. And I says, well, I guess I'll take calls. It was only my second show, or it might have been the third show. I said, well, okay, I guess I'll take calls. So he comes on, and then another guy calls in. Comes in. The two guys from the chat room over there. And they're talking, and they're like having a conversation on my show, they're just chatting away about the weather, whatever it was. And I said, well, what the hell is this? But I was brand new, and I didn't want to be rude to hang up on them. But finally, I eased them off. I got them off, and I finished my show. Then after that, every show I did, Steve Travesty was calling in to be my co-host. Steve Travesty was now the co-host of the Opperman Report, the Opperman and Steve Travesty Report. And it got so bad, he was like the first caller, but it got so bad that he would start as soon as I introduced the guest, he'd be calling in to join in the show. So I finally just blocked him. I blocked him on Skype. And then he gets all upset with me. And we're on a round table one night, and he says to me, why did you block me? And it's because he kept calling in. He goes, I didn't call that much. He called in every single show. But anyway, so what happens is, later on in the story, because what happens is, they moved me to Friday nights, and I'm on right after Sean David Morton. And I guess one of my first shows Friday nights was about Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody knows that I was talking about Jeffrey Epstein before anybody was. And I might have been interviewed too. I might have mentioned Epstein during my interview with Travesty, okay? But what I noticed was, because I'd be waiting around to do my show, and I'd listen to Sean David Morton's show, and he starts talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And I said, well, this is odd. And again, he never talks about real people and real crimes and real things. But his take on this situation was completely opposite to my take on the situation. And he was claiming over and over and over again, he did like 10 rants about this over like a 2-3 week period, where he claimed, well, these girls, they don't seem to be unhappy. In this girl's picture with Randy, Prince Andy, she's smiling there, and Andy has his arm around her waist. She has a big smile on her face. She looks to be about 17 years old, and she was at the time. But, they grabbed this kid when she was like 13. And they get to fly around the world on these private planes and stay at these luxury resorts. These girls enjoyed it. And then he says, and by the way, in these foreign countries, like the Virgin Islands, they don't have the same statutory rape laws that we have here. Over there, you can date a 14-year-old if you want. And I'm listening to this, And I'm like in a state of shock. And you know me, I get pissed off. I get really angry, especially back in those days. It was a big deal to be on the radio. I'd be nervous before the show. I'm still a little nervous now, but I'd be nervous, all pumped up, And so I never actually, and by the way, too, another thing, too, like he never ever said, hey, come on after me, the Opera Report, Ed Opperman. Oh, boy, fun guy. Never mentioned. So the next thing that happened was that Sean David Morton is one of these guys, and I know there's a lot of people listening to this show that are into this stuff, this free man, this sovereign, sovereign man stuff. They're into that stuff. And he was one of those guys and was preaching that stuff. And Travesty was into all that too as well. And Travesty was also a follower of this guy named Kate from Gaia. It was like a transvestite guy, Anyway, he has a YouTube channel, very popular guy. And it was even an occasion, too, where Kate from Gaia was a guest on Sean David Morton show, and they got into a big fight and hung up on each other, right, live on the air. It's hysterical. So Steve Travesty gets some kind of minor traffic offense. I mean, it might have been a DUI. I don't want to say talk out of turn. Maybe it wasn't. Whatever it was a minor traffic court problem he had. And he's taking legal advice from Sean David Morton, from Kate from Gaia. And they tell him, well, don't worry. All you have to do is say this. And, I see this all the time. People that tell me, oh, don't worry. I'll never get caught. I'll never get arrested. And if they have to prove this, I'll never prove it. And all I have to do is say this. They have these crazy ideas in their head of how to avoid arrest and prosecution. And people like Sean David Morton are in prison today, doing 6 years in prison today, because they think like this. The things they see on TV, how court works, they just don't understand. So Kate from Gaia is advising Travesty that if he shows up to court, but he doesn't cross into the well of the court, if he talks to the judge from outside the well, that none of it counts, and it doesn't. He's not under their ruling, and Travesty, he kept talking about how he was filing these motions, and he talked to the clerk, and he told the clerk he wanted a different judge next time. It was just, and then he didn't understand too why he had to go to a different city for where to go to court. Why isn't the court in my city? And I said, because it goes by the county, not by the city. And he goes, this guy's like 40 years old, and he didn't understand the basic things in life. So he was all convinced that he won his case because he never stepped into the well. And I says, well, what's the disposition of your case? He goes, well, I don't know. I says, well, if you never officially appeared in court, you have a bench warrant out for you right now. So he goes, well, maybe I do have a warrant. Okay, well, I know you do. So I was trying to help this kid. But he has this whole fantasy thing going on in his head about how he's going to get out of this stuff by saying magic words in court. Now, later on, he's driving. And again, too, God bless you. Listen, if you're into all this stuff and you think it works for you and the way you're doing it works, that's fine, okay? All I'm telling you is I've been to court many, many times, and I've seen people trying to do this, and it's never worked for anybody. I've seen them get a psych hold over this kind of thing, which is what almost happened to Travesty. And it seems like the motivation for people doing this is so that they don't have to get their car registered and get a driver's license. My God, when I couldn't afford to pay my registration, I couldn't afford to pay my insurance. My car was unregistered. I was driving around in a panic attack because I didn't want to get pulled over because all the problems, you risk yourself when you get pulled over. But these guys, they're looking for that, and they want to drive with no plate on their car, with no license, and they're sovereign. So he's driving through a DUI checkpoint. And they grab him, and he's going through his little shenanigans about how he doesn't want to tell him what his name is, and, he's a free man, and where do I live? I live here. I'm living here in this space right now. All that kind of stuff, and he winds up getting arrested. They throw him in jail. He's in there for a few days. They got to raise bail to get him out, and then he even tells a story about how when they were taking him home from the jail, his poor girlfriend's mother had to put up bail money for him and stuff like that. They get pulled over again by another cop. And this time, the fight's all out of him. Yes, sir. My name is Steve Travesty. Yes, sir. And let me tell you, when I just got out of jail, yes, sir. Oh, God. But that's the producer of Sean David Morton. That's not Sean David Morton. Sean David Morton has got balls like a bull. This guy. This guy is a con man's con man. All right? Like no other that I can imagine. His first problems come around 2010. All right? He founded a company called the Delphi Investment Group. And the theory here is that he was going to make use his psychic powers to predict what was going on in the stock market. And use use his psychic powers to make stock picks and bond picks in the market, whatever, and they didn't even have like a trader's license. They didn't have a stockbroker's license. They didn't have any of this. It wasn't set up as a financial institution that was legally authorized to do trading. None of that. He just formed a corporation and started using somebody's Forex account. Some unnamed third party, by the way, had a Forex account that was supposedly doing these trades. Now, the way Sean David Morton tells the story is it was going great. He was making millions. And by the way, that was like $6 million, man. He raised like $6 million into this company because all the gullible suckers listened to Art Bell, and calling in, let me invest my money with the best psychic in the world. But he didn't even set the company up correctly. So Sean David Morton's story is that he was a genius. All of his trades were going great. Everybody was making money. But the guy who was supposed to be doing the trades didn't listen to him. If only he had listened to me, Sean David Morton, we'd all be rich right now. But he didn't listen to me. He didn't make the trades I told him to make. And he lost all the money. What was I to do? Right? That's Sean David Morton's story. Now, there's another story. And this one comes from Bill Ryan from Project Camelot, who was partners with Kerry Cassidy of Project Camelot. And Bill Ryan tells a story that he had invested $25,000 with Sean David Morton. And so did Kerry Cassidy. Kerry Cassidy invested $100,000 with Sean David Morton. And what he says was the guy who was doing the trades went away for the weekend and had his children running the Forex computer account for him. He had everything written down for them what to do along those lines. And then the market crashed and the kids didn't know what to do. And that's how all the money got lost. That's what he thinks happened. So Sean David Morton says, I told the guy what to do. He didn't do it. The investors, a couple of investors that we know about said, well, the guy who was supposed to be doing it wasn't there. His kids were there. There was a market crashed. And by the way, Morton didn't tell any of the investors he lost all the money for like a year. That's what the victims of the scam think. Now, what the government says, what the SEC says has happened is this. He gets these $6 million in investors. And rather than invest any money at all, what he and his wife do is they set up a bunch of little shell corporations, form little corporations, XYZ Corporation, MMT Corporation, whatever, and they start funneling money, the investors' money, into these corporations. And now on paper, when you look at the books, oh yeah, and if you can, by the way, you can kind of do this legit and get away with it. I can have a corporation, right, called a Delphi, what's it called? Delphi Associates newsletter, right? I could have the Delphi Associates investment group. And then another company called Sean David Morton Consulting. And one of the expenses of a Delphi investment group is Sean David Morton Consulting fee. That's perfectly legit. You can do this. See, what really bugs me about this, the SEC fraud, and by the way, this was a civil lawsuit. There was no arrest made in this case. This was a civil case. All they did was the SEC sued him for the money, okay, that he defrauded his investors. What really gets me about this, though, is with $6 million, He could have set up this company legit. There's plenty of small little stock brokerage firms, little investment companies all over New York. There's millions of them. Okay, little one-man, two-man shows who could have took that $6 million and made some real money from it and gave Sean a big cut as the salesman bringing in all this money. Okay, and I think Sean could have paid his bills. He could have been a very wealthy man just doing that, just doing that. But instead, he got greedy and he set up all these little phony companies and he stole all that money. Okay, and now he says, well, people lost money, but no one complained. Obviously, the SEC found out about this because people were complaining. He had no insurance. He had no broker's insurance to rescue these people for their losses. None of this was set up legit. He's lucky he didn't get charged because there's all kinds of licensing and bonding and stuff that you need to have a real investment firm, and he didn't do any of that. He just set up a little LLC or an incorporation, a subchapter S corporation, and people just stole people's money. Okay, then he files a lawsuit against the SEC claiming that they're harassing him. Okay, one of his little bogus lawsuits that he's filed tons of them. Anyway, in 2013, he was ordered to pay $11 million to the SEC within 14 days. Now, I'm not sure if he paid that or not, but $6 million went somewhere. Now, okay, we're going to take a little commercial break here. And now a word from our sponsors. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com, GreenHome.com, Amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Hey you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe add new point-of-sale locations across the country quickly, or bring in revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services to your office building, warehouse, or lobby? CartKing.com is the answer to your needs. CartKing.com is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile retail, coffee, food, carts, and kiosks that money can buy. For 20 years, CartKing.com has been working with clients across America to provide indoor and outdoor carts and kiosks for any application. That's www.cart-king.com. Give them a call at 877-986-7771. Tell them Ed Opperman sent you. So you go to the website, CartKing.com, you check out their different designs and models. You pick out which design applies to your business. They'll custom design it for you, custom build it for you, and ship it worldwide. CartKing.com.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. And we're talking about the saga of Sean David Morton, his crimes, cons, and convictions. So let's get to the cons. Okay. First of all, there's SEC con. Okay. Now, he loses his fight with the SEC, and he's ordered to pay back like $13 million. But still, he's got these loyal, faithful followers who hang on his every word and believe everything he says. And he would always talk about how, and a lot of people say this in this Freeman Sovereign group, that your Social Security number is backed by bonds or something like stock, and it's traded on the stock exchange, and it's worth all this, whatever. And people would call in and say, well, Sean, how did you find that out? He goes, oh, well, I actually got mine, and I ordered it from the IRS. And then he'll change the subject, and he'll start talking about, and did you know the IRS is incorporated? It's a corporation, and it's incorporated in Puerto Rico? Did you know that? Oh, the government can't pick up the buildings and walk into a bank. You need an entity in there to go and get a bank account and to be sued. And you need that. You need an entity to handle these functions. And just because it's incorporated in Puerto Rico or Colorado, none of that really matters. Whoever decided to do the corporate, maybe had a hookup down there or whatever, and he did it for his whatever reasons. It's probably a corrupt reason, probably, but whatever. But Sean David Morton now comes up with this plan, a scheme where he's going to help people get out of their student loans and get out of their mortgages, their upside down mortgages, and get out of all kinds of debts and fines and fees and stuff like that by creating bonds based on the value of your Social Security number, whatever, or this thing that they have, that they've imagined. So he's going to create these instruments, these coupons, non-negotiable bonds that he prints up on his own printer. Okay. And he's selling them to people like $2,000 a pop. And if it doesn't work out for them, they're out of luck. Okay. And they're going to present this to their bank and say, this is a bond, a non-negotiable bond in the amount of $1 million to satisfy my mortgage. Here you go. And if you don't get back to me in 30 days, you accepted my deal. Now, I'm sure that when Bank of America or Wells Fargo or even the IRS, when they get something like this in the mail, whoever opens this up says, "Oh, what's this? I better pass this off to my boss who's on vacation or whatever." So you got some stall time there, okay, to get away with this for a bit. But you're not going to get away with that forever. You might luck out 1 out of 100 times. So he starts selling this scam to people, these poor gullible saps that listen to his show. And by the way, during this time, I visited his website one time, and he had a very popular show, by the way. They called him over. They said he was the anchor host at Revolution Radio. Okay? And that's why Friday night was so popular, because they had the anchor host, Sean David Morton. Then I was on. I was a very popular host. Then right after me was Kerry Cassidy, who was another hugely popular host. So they said, well, Friday night was the biggest night of the week over at the Great Revolution Radio. So he had these gullible fans who listened to his show. And one of the advertisers he had on his website was a wishing box. Okay, I forget if it was a wishing box or a wishing machine. But you can Google it. It's either wishing box or wishing machine. And if you Google it, you'll find a box. Okay. I think there's even a dial on the front of the box, like a meter. Okay. And then there's headphones. And I think there was a hard hat that went with it. You had to put this hard hat and headphones on your head. And you put it on your head and you turned it on. I'm sure there was an on-off button to this box, because there's $200 for this box. And you make a wish real hard, and your wishes would come through because of this box, the magic in this box. I don't think even Sean David Morton had the chutzpah to sell magic beans. Okay. But he sold a magic wishing box. Okay. I tell you these things, guys, because I don't like to see you getting suckered in by a lot of these people, these alternative media hosts either. Okay. Who are selling you magic beans over and over, week after week, telling you that tomorrow's the end of the world. So he's got this scam going, where he's selling these bonds to bail people out of their debt. $2,000, no refunds. Okay, he's going to print something out of his printer. Hey, mail this to your bank, okay, but no refunds if it doesn't work out. So according to him, all of his customers were happy. But somehow, because like I said, I got the sealed indictment, somehow got back to this grand jury that indicted him, returned this indictment. Who was it that indicted him? It was the United States of California, the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. Okay? Against Sean David Morton and his poor wife, Melissa Morton. By the way, too, in that SEC scam, a lot of these corporations they were filtering money to was under his wife's name, Melissa Morton. He comes up with this scheme it's bad enough he's doing this con where he's telling people they're going to get out of this. And there's a list of the companies he was sending these bonds to. Okay. And somehow they got a copy. They got a list, right? The detectives investigating this case, the prosecutors in this case, somehow got a list of all the people he was sending these bonds to. So, somebody was complaining. All right. There was a search warrant. I'm sure they got some of it that way. But this came to their attention somehow. So their next plan is what they're going to do is, now what he says happened is this. He gets arrested by the IRS as he's coming off a cruise ship. By the way, this guy had this scam where he was doing these cruise appearances, and going to all these seminars. Everybody knows the guy's a con man. They know he's a liar. They know he's a fraud. But they invite him to every one of these things. He's doing a cruise. He sells this cruise, and he's doing a psychic cruise and giving predictions and telling people how they don't have to pay taxes and they don't have to. He's going to sell them these print out copy machine bonds, and they're going to pay off their mortgages and stuff like that. And they arrest him as he's walking off the ship. Now, you'd think if he was a psychic, he'd know that all this stuff wasn't going to work out for him. But no, he didn't. His psychic powers were not working at that moment. His next plan, okay, that got him arrested off that cruise ship was in 2009. He and his wife, even though they claimed they had no income. Okay, by the way, that's a whole nother story. But he didn't get, this guy's gotten away with so much that they didn't touch him on. And even these charges here, he could have negotiated this down and got out with no jail time, okay, if he was just a normal crook. But this guy's a crazy crook. Their plan was in 2009 was they were going to start to file a bunch of tax returns and list themselves as single. They weren't a married couple. They weren't filing joint. They weren't filing separate, married filing separate. They were filing as single. They both claimed they were single. Now, he claims he had an accountant. I had an accountant who, by the way, an accountant did all this, these tax returns for us. Now, what he claims happened was this, that because of those losses in the SEC scam, okay, back in 2010, that all he was doing was claiming those losses to offset income. And that's how he got these refund checks from the IRS. That's perfectly proper. So if you have losses, you can list your losses and you offset your income. Everyone does that. And everyone does do that. But what he was doing was this, and it's in the indictment right here, okay? And no one would know about this indictment. It would still be sealed if this lunatic didn't attach it as an exhibit to some really insane motion he filed where he's claiming he's his own court. He's the Morton court, okay? And he attaches a search warrant and his sealed indictment. I wouldn't know about any of this. I wouldn't be doing a show about this if the man wasn't so insane that he filed a motion claiming he's the Morton court, and he's been trespassed upon by this search warrant, and he charges a fee of $500 an hour for every minute he's getting trespassed. The guy's insane, absurdifiably insane. If a guy like this walked into my office, I couldn't sit there with a straight face. I'd walk him to the door. I said, I can't help you. You're nuts. I don't want to touch you. The insaneness will rub off on me. They come up with this plan in 2009 that they're going to file these tax returns for 2008, 2007, 2006, and 2005. And it's not to offset losses. Let me find the line right here. They use 1099 forms. And I talked about this before. It's a common scam in the projects in low-income neighborhoods where people will fill out these phony tax returns and they'll get a refund. The IRS will just churn out a refund check for them using dependents, and there was withholding, right? They claim there was too much withholding. I deserve a refund. IRS just churns out a check and doesn't check it out. It's very, very common scam, but they do this for like $500, $1,000. If you're really gutsy, you do it for $1,200. Because if you get caught, you got to send the money back. But not John David Morton. No, not him. What they did was, let me find this exact line here. Okay, boy, I had this all lined up before. What they did was, okay, defendants acting together and separately prepared and aided in the preparation of defendant Sean David Morton's 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008 income tax returns, tax forms, and other documents submitted under false returns with attached false documents to the IRS. They created multiple copies and multiple versions of their income tax returns and submitted them to various IRS service centers throughout the United States in 2009, 2010. Now, so he's claiming, well, we filed our return and we were taking our losses. We were listing our losses. But what they really did was they claimed that they had received interest income, and they turned in some kind of bogus instrument to attach to the return to show that where their interest came from, and that there was withholding. But they submitted multiple returns to different IRS centers in order to trick the IRS computers that one of them would kick back a refund. So that's blatant fraud. And the returns that they filed weren't all the identical returns. They were all different. So they were filing multiple returns to different IRS centers. Cannot be more blatantly a fraud. Okay? And it's claiming, and I guess when Kerry Cassidy has him on her show, you know, when she got ripped off to begin with for $100,000, and he comes on there and he's saying, oh, no, all we did was it. And she's just buying it hook, line, and sinker because she's never read the indictment. She never read it. Or I wouldn't understand it if she did read it. Or there's something else going on. So they do kick back a $500,000 refund out of all the multiple returns that they filed, these fraudulent returns, multiple returns, various returns to different IRS centers. They got away with it. They get $500,000. Now you think, you know, he had to know this was going to blow up in his face. You think he just would have took the money and left the country? Because there was talk too, by the way, the producers at Revolution Radio used to say that they heard them talking as they were producing their show, and they were talking about the money scams and running off to Costa Rica. They had a plan long ago. All right? Now, the IRS says, okay, you know what? We sent you that $500,000 by mistake. We want it back. Okay. So as soon as the money gets into their account, they open up two different accounts in the same bank like complete idiots. You know, if you're going to stash the money, make some effort to stash it. They open up two different accounts in the same bank, and they move the money to those two different accounts. They take out $70,000 cash in his pockets, and then they lease a Mercedes Benz. Okay, because they have nothing but the best for these two. By the way, there was a bankruptcy fraud too in the middle of all this going on, so I forgot to tell you about that. But we don't have time now. I'm running out of time. What they do now is, okay, the IRS says, well, we want the money back. Well, and the IRS actually puts a lien and freezes these bank accounts. Melissa starts sending letters to the IRS. No. Those aren't insurance accounts. Those are my sole accounts. Even though they had proof of the bank, but it was a joint account by both of them. Now, so they never claim to the IRS that, oh, no, we're just taking our losses. This is perfectly legitimate. All they ever said was, in response to the IRS, was that you got the wrong bank account. You have no right to that money because it's not under it's under my husband's name. It's not under my name. Now you think, okay, fine, they got caught. All right, let's just give the IRS back the money. Okay, and if they could have gave back the money, they could have gave back most of the money and got away with this. You know what they do in 2010? They do it again. They file a whole bunch of tax returns again for those same years, doing the same exact thing, trying to pull the same exact scam again, hoping that they'll get another, mistaken check for $500, and this time they'll take it out faster. So the guy, you know, they bust him coming off the train, the boat, and then he needs to get bail, right? He needs to get bailed out. So they go and they find a friend of theirs who's another one of these alternative media hosts, and she co-signs their bail bonds ticket. Okay, as soon as she told me that, I said, "You gotta get your name off that thing right away, because this guy's a problem." Okay, you don't want your name on that. And they screwed her too. You know what they did to this poor woman? They took her on a trip to Universal Studios or SeaWorld or something like that, you know, which is like 4 hours away driving California, and they left her there. They abandoned her there. She has no way to get home. She has no car. You know what I mean? This is just insanity. By the way, too, I almost forgot to tell you, there's something going on with these two, too, with some cat breeding business that they had. Because back when his show was on before mine at Revolution Radio, because Revolution Radio is run by a bunch of nuts, and one of the things they used to do just to harass me and bust my balls was they would take the previous show's calls or the show after me, and they would forward their calls to my number. Okay. So I'd be doing my show and I'd start getting calls, people looking for Sean David Morton. So I'd start getting these calls and these emails and stuff from people telling me, when you see Sean David Morton, can you tell him that the cat he sent me isn't the AKC? You know what? You want to talk about what? I have nothing to do with Sean David Morton and his cat business, and all over these search warrants too. They want this cat business stuff. The IRS is all over this cat breeding company that they had as well. You can't make this stuff up. So he has to go to trial, right? He decides he's going to defend himself in court because he's a legal genius. He's a constitutional and legal genius. By the way, I've gotten a look too at his, this I saw on UFO Watchdog. You can find it over there. Is they had a copy of his appeal to the Supreme Court of his case. And his whole appeal, the entirety of his appeal was, this is constitutional blasphemy. And the judge writes back, I do not understand this. Your case must be denied. All of this stuff is just time-wasting tactics and nonsense and foolishness. This guy never thought he could get away with this. So he gets sentenced, man. They convict him. The day of their conviction, the judge orders, they're guilty. The poor wife, Melissa, has a stroke there in the courtroom. They have to take her to the hospital. Now, they negotiated a deal for the wife, and she got a sweetheart deal, man. 2 years of house arrest, where she didn't have to go to prison. She didn't have to go to jail or anything like that. Supervised probation. Sweet deal, man, And then they added to the conditions that she wasn't allowed to talk to Sean, and because he was going to prison. Sean takes off. Sean David Morton goes on the lam. Now, again, you think, you're going to go on the run. You don't. My God, you can't leave behind an agent. He does a radio show, Kerry Cassidy, claiming he's going to continue his radio show from On the Run. Now, do you have any idea? Okay, Kerry Cassidy's doing an interview with someone telling her that he's a fugitive from justice. Does she not realize that the marshals would have come to her home and looked on her computer to see if there's any phone? They would have search warranted her house to look for phone numbers and addresses of Sean David Morton. That this poor woman who had her name on this bail, even though she took her name off the bail, that still they were going to show up at her house. This is what the kind of stuff I do for a living. I look for people. I used to work for bail bonds, and we'll look for fugitives. And you look for names associated with them, and you go to their house. You knock on their door at 3 o'clock in the morning. Is he here? We got a warrant for this guy. This is how this stuff works. My God. It's just so crazy. So he gets convicted, right? He goes on the run. I'm taking off. I'm in Iceland, he's telling him. Oh, I'm in Iceland. He's like, smiling into the camera. He's doing his video Skype interview with Kerry Cassidy, right? Who's one of his con victims, or something else went on. But otherwise, the above story is that he stole $100,000 from her, but she's not upset about it. Okay, that's a possibility. Who knows what else was going on? Okay. They catch him. Not even the 2 months. He's not even on the line for 2 months. And the whole time, too, they got him under surveillance. They're watching him buy pizzas. He's going into a school. They're watching him, he's a Domino's pizza place, all this kind of stuff. So they're following him around, but they bust him on the day of the eclipse. So long story short, our hero, Sean David Morton, got convicted to 6 years in prison. They wanted like 80 months, but they jacked it up a little bit. First, they were recommending 60 months. They jacked it up to 72 months. But the thing is, man, if he had just hired a lawyer, if he had just prepared these things, all the things he's done, except for the crazy tax return stuff, all that stuff with Delphi, he could have done all that legally and kept that money, and done real investments. What more can you ask for? $6 million in investments. You can't turn that into $10 million. You're a loser. Even with these fraudulent texts, the IRS isn't as big and mean as everybody thinks they are. A lot of their stuff is letters. To get to this point where they're arresting people with search warrants and tracking you down, U.S. Marshals, that takes a lot to do that. You really got to rub it in their face, like go on a radio show and make the judge names and call the prosecutor names and make fun of people, and laugh at them, in order for them to really get this pissed off to throw you in prison. All of this could have been avoided. All of this could have been negotiated away. It could have been negotiated away, a little probation, and he could have kept a chunk of this money. You know what I'm saying? But it's the guy's ego, his hubris, his psychosis, man. You know, living a life of a fraud your whole life where every word out of your mouth is a lie, something you're making up. His poor wife now, who had this sweet deal, now she's got to go to prison for 2 years, a real prison. Who knows how she was involved, how much she knew. The guy's got a big personality. I'm sure she's not wasn't the mastermind behind all this. You know, she cooperated with it. She went along with it. So she's guilty. But again, look, even with all this nonsense, with the second round of tax returns, they were going to give her probation, house arrest. You know, they were going to give her a sweet deal. Just imagine what this guy could have got away with if he took some of that money he stole and hired a decent lawyer who could negotiate this down. You know, he could have had a sweet deal and got away with this, man. Anyway, if you enjoyed tonight's show, check out OperaManReport.com. That's where we have our member section. I went a little bit over tonight. So we have the member section, all kinds of great content in there. We put up a show with AJ Weberman, and I'm going to do another show too. There's a lot of stuff I left out of this Sean David Morton show. A lot of behind-the-scenes gossip. I'm going to name more names. Okay, and I'll put that up in the member section too. There's a lot of stuff, and even other things I know about these people, scams and lies and frauds that they put on the air and stuff like that. You know, who the hell cares? It'll be in the member section for the loyal listeners who like to support the show. And I really, really need your support this month too, because this computer's freezing up, you know, and the other computer in the other room, the monitor went on it. So I can't even now, in the middle of the show when I need to click on stuff and look things up, I can't even do that now. Monitor's cheap. I can get a used one for like $10, but we need some funds here to support the show. OperamanReport@gmail.com. I'll give you a discount on the member section. $60, you get 13 months. Okay, it's like a half price. All right, great deal. Can't miss it. All right, guys, I love you. Thank you so much. Coming up next is Pierce Redmond. Oh, and he's got that guy Steven Singular on again, talking about the order and all that kind of cool stuff. OperamanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs, a lot of content there at OppermanReport.com. And it's the memberships that support the Opperman Report and allow us to play these shows for free on Friday nights and Saturday nights on all the stations you hear us on. You can also make a donation at OppermanReport.com. If you want to support the show and become a member, I can give you a discount. I'll give you 13 months for $65 if you email me directly at OppermanReport@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at OppermanReport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.